What's up AUDL fans, Daniel Cohen here with the Tiger Bomb Film Room. Today we're going to be looking at how the Raleigh Flyers use defensive switches to contain opposing handlers. Now, controlling the opposing team's handlers, meaning keeping them from gaining power position, is an important component of every defensive scheme. Effective switches are going to prevent handlers from catching the disc with forward momentum, making it much more difficult to move the offense. In this clip, we see Harper Garvey and Jabron Meeser of the New York Empire looking to move the disc with handler motion. Flyers defenders Andrew McKelvey and Tim McAllister do a great job containing Garvey with well-coordinated switches. So McKelvey initially leaves Garvey in the backfield, choosing to set a double team on Meeser. As Meeser dishes it back to Garvey, notice how Tim McAllister makes a move to stop the throw, and he lets his momentum immediately take him towards Garvey, even though that wasn't the man he was guarding prior to the double team. What happened was McAllister was in a better defensive position to quickly get to Garvey, so that's why the switch happened. After Garvey gets the disc, he immediately tosses it back to Meeser, which leaves McAllister off balance and unable to stay in front of his man. As Garvey runs by him, he points to McKelvey, indicating McKelvey should now cover Garvey, again because he's in a better defensive position to do so. This switch causes Garvey to change his cut, so he moves back to where he cut from and basically tries the same thing again. In response, the Flyers defenders switch back, with McAllister now covering Garvey and McKelvey on the mark. Again, Garvey is forced to change his cut, this time turning his upfield cut into more of a horizontal cut, significantly limiting the yardage gained on the next throw. Because of the effective switching, the Empire are unable to get anything going on offense, and sure enough, they turn the disc over just a few throws later. Thanks for watching everyone, and be sure to join us next time in the Tiger Bomb Film Room.
Hey everybody, in this video we're going to have a look at Japan running down the pull against USA in the final of the 2016 World Championships. If you like the analysis and the ideas put forward in this video, then share it with your teammates, and subscribe to Phillips Ultimate on YouTube to hear about the next one.
Marquette on the field. I asked Josh Marquette what he thought about playing Japan.
The first thing that catches the eye here is Japan's number 3 not following the initial deep cut and instead switching to Mark Kittredge. He's likely been given the task of stopping the first under threat whilst the teammate picks up the deep threat, a fairly common tactic to stop set plays. The two Japanese defenders towards the top of the screen position themselves so they are able to see each other and then communicate via gesticulation, pointing out the threat where they want the other player to cover. They haven't decided exactly who they are marking until they arrive and analyse the situation. If Mikkel, who's cutting under on the far sideline, had arrived earlier, it's quite possible that the Japanese defenders would have chosen to mark different players. Both defenders react immediately to the shared communication and take their marks. This 1 second of communication and teamwork helps put USA on the back foot and results in a stall 6 layout save. USA may be applying the old adage of run through the poachers here, however the Japanese players are not really poaching. After the first couple of seconds they are each closely covering a specific mark. Note how every defender glances frequently between their mark, the disc and the space, dynamically reacting to the situation around them, and in particular where the thrower's focus is directed. This means they can save their energy by only committing to cover realistic and time-critical threats. This gives the impression of poaching, improves the efficiency of their movement, and helps facilitate dynamic switching of marks. Ben Wiggins realised that Buzz defenders pay a lot of attention to where the thrower is looking when he was trying to figure out their D in 2007. This clip of him throwing a no-look score against the defense and then giving a knowing nod has stuck in my mind ever since.
Ben Wiggins with a no-look to MC. 2-all.
It's apparent that Japan run down the pool matching person for person, and when they arrive they reanalyze, focusing on communicating and switching where possible. This maximizes their effectiveness and adds an unpredictable element which often negates any set play the opposition has planned. That's all for now, I'll see you soon.
I asked Josh Marquette what he thought about playing Japan, and he kind of shook his head. He said, they're so hard to guard. If we turn it over...
So we're going to do some, there's a little bit of simple dump poaching, but it's effective, basically effective switching in this. So if we take a look at the clip and then we can go back through it. Ooh.
Trying to go for the Oyo. Doesn't quite get to Ben Laurie. Strong mark from Cole Sullivan. No, Gibson with it. Dumps to Nattenberg. Marked by Minershagen. Nattenberg to Gibson. back to tank. Switch from Supnik and Minershagen.
And Hoffman.
Cool. So if we go back to that and we see the moment at which there is a switch that happens.
Dumps to Nattenberg. Marked by Minershagen. Nattenberg to Gibb.
So they're kind of, the black team do a very effective job of forcing the disc kind of go backwards with these movements. So this pass that had just happened, they kind of were going backwards, the other team. And now, as you can see, kind of if this person goes up the line, this person is in a way favourable position to just cover them, and especially if they're going to go and then get the disc back. So if we slow it down, you can see it again.
Back to tank.
And you get a really nice covering and switching and lots of communication that goes on in this one, which is really important. So if we play it again.
Gibson.
And by doing this, instead, if we just had a straight mark, which happened in this instead, we would get this person with the disc. If we go back, I missed it. Yeah, if we didn't have a switch here, we would have this person with the disc, and their player kind of a long way off, and also on the wrong side of their person. And this player still kind of free for that next pass. And because of this, you can get the covering on this side of the player, and this person completely marked out, which makes it a lot harder for this next continuation to go. So the black team will kind of close down all kind of angles of it. So if we move on to the next clip.
Kind of learn these lessons and realize what you need to work on, as opposed to learning it in October.
Well, a year ago, we saw Bird Squad and Fury, the former national finalists from 2017. They met in the quarterfinals.
Cool. So if we go back a bit, you might have missed. This is, I suppose it's a combination of poaching and switching, which is not normally done. But it's very effective in this situation just because of the kind of the weird setup that
she said, we'd rather this happen now.
That Molly Brown have. Oh no, Fury. Sorry. No, Molly Brown. I'm afraid. No, this is Fury. So we can see here that we've got 3 people, another person on the sideline here, and they actually have another person to the left. So we have, this person comes into space. So we've got one person off screen to the left, this person here, and another person, and we have one of the Cartagena sisters and another player who are just kind of not going fully to mark their players, because they see that there's just 2 people in a really tight space which can easily be covered by one person. So this person is just kind of standing in the way of these 2, and this person is standing in the lane. So it's an effective poach going on here and communication between these 2, so that, or kind of, I don't know if they actually talk about it, but you can see that they're kind of on it. And when this person starts going, she then picks up the other player's player and she goes to this one. So it's a really effective poach which kind of shuts down any initial movement from the team. They kind of stay with the disc and oh, I can't do anything. And it also means that in this situation that 26 has got such a head start on this person going deep that she can react, and if this player is faster, she doesn't have to worry about it as much if she reacts a bit later. Cool. Okay, the next clip. this is very, it's very rainy in this clip, but hopefully it will be an example of maybe where identifying where kind of poaches or switches could happen. Sorry. So if we just watch through the clip and see if you can see any places where you think a switch could happen. So the timestamp's in the bottom left if you want to use that to kind of say a time. If not, just kind of identify which bit of the field you think a poach could happen in. Cool. So we kind of have a half poach there, but did anybody see any other times where maybe we could have got a poach? And do you guys think that the poach that went on was effective, or should it have been done differently? Does anybody have any ideas? If I slow it down and play again.
Anna, I didn't have any ideas. Sorry.
That's okay, Felix. So this kind of first bit is just everybody's getting through, and then we kind of have a situation here where we've got like maybe a pitch, maybe a switch, maybe not a switch. It's not really, maybe like half communicated, and therefore doesn't really work very well. So if these people really communicated that they were doing a switch, and we kind of saw what we saw in the first clip, with the kind of the handler covering, this would have been really well covered, and it would have meant that a throw to the break side would have been a lot harder. But because of this, these people have so much space, and they have so much free space on this side, which is the break side of the pitch, which is definitely really bad. And it's definitely sad that they didn't just use the really free person in the end zone. So OP, they want to throw to OP too much. So if we go back and we watch this little bit again, and the missed opportunity, which was this. If this person switched to here and this person stayed on here, we would have kind of everybody covered, and it would be magical. But we have one person overcommit and the other person overcommit, which makes it really sad. Cool. An unfortunate, or maybe a forced turnover. Who should help them? Cool. So now we'll go into the next step, which is a one where we've got someone who wants to go for a switch, but it's not particularly well communicated, and we're looking for who could help Tom in this situation. Cool. So we'll play it again. Who do you think should help Tom to make this effective switching?
I think Kenji, who was marking the guy on disc, right?
So if we look again, yeah. So we have Kenji who's on disc, and yeah, Kenji definitely could have helped in this situation. We have kind of Redford behind, who is already covering a person, and his person is in a dangerous position. The person on disc is actually probably one of the least dangerous people on the pitch, apart from the fact that you kind of point block them maybe, but they can't move and they can't score. So yeah, definitely in this situation, Kenji could have dropped off and helped out. Nice.
The disc, but they end up turning over in front of, like, right in front of their own end zone, which is extremely dangerous. And then against a quality team like the one they're playing, should be a goal almost every time very easily. But because of the way they defend, they're able to hold them for a long time. So if we just roll it on 5 or 10 seconds. So disc is in. If we pause it there, I just want to highlight the 3 or 4 people well, at the back in white. You can see they're all facing the disc, rather than sort of looking at their man, trying to follow them. They're all sort of looking at the disc, trying to read where it's going to go. As we roll it on, you can see all of them talking to each other and pointing at each other and covering all of the different options. They're really trying to prevent them from just getting free options like under at the front of the end zone. And they do a really, really good job. They're constantly switching, constantly poaching, really marking all of the space as well. Again, you can see that the Japanese players aren't really cutting that much. It's because there's just no space because of the way they're poaching off. They're trying to get free, but because of the way they're sort of marking the space really well, it's tough. Eventually, they do get the score, which, you know, should happen almost every time when you get a turnover in the front of the end zone, but it made it really difficult for them. Okay, so I think this one's a pretty quick example. Japan went for the deep shot in this one, but it didn't come off. Pick up the disc, and we pause it there. You can see that they're, you know, in what looks to be quite a very poachy offense, where no one's really within sort of 10 meters of their man. They do this to just try and throw off the offense and make them make mistakes, which is what happens here, where they take a risky option through the middle without, you know, first throw. If we play, you can see they turn over right straight away again. Okay, so in this one, again, back to the buzz bullets. Again, they do quite switch heavy offense. You can see, I think, if we just wind it back about 5 seconds. Okay, and play. If we pause it just there, you can see there's now 2 players in black sort of attacking the disc. He's the one on the far side nearest the guy in orange, sort of leaving his man because he knows that even though he hasn't communicated that he wants to switch, it's obvious he needs to switch. But he's fine to leave his man because he trusts in the rest of the defense and what, like, their philosophy is. If we play on, you see that he leaves his man, turns around, and then just picks someone else up. It just eliminates all the options in front. Again, he's covering options. They're just forced to go backwards. And I think they end up calling timeout there, or a couple passes later. Okay, just pause it on the screen. So, you know, poaching, when you've got like a whole sort of philosophy about it, it relies heavily on everyone being very good, very intelligent, because things go wrong. When they go wrong, they tend to go bad very, very, very quickly, which is what happens here. So we can play, see what happens. So again, they're trying to run the same sort of defense that they have before, where they're switching all the time. You can see that they're all miles away from their marks. And as we watch, we'll see quite a few players in white go deep at the same time, and there's just not enough people covering. So he slips, but he would never have been anywhere near. If we wind it back just at the point of like the throw or a couple seconds before the throw. If we pause it there, guy who should be marking the person who eventually scores, the guy in black next to the person in the blue hat, he wants to pass his man off to someone. He doesn't really want to be covering them anymore. He wants to be passing off to someone deep. The problem is there's so many people deep and people coming back that he isn't able to communicate it early enough. And in the end, it's a huge breakdown where someone gets 5-6 meters of separation. So it's a very easy score. No one near him. Cool.
What?
What a nice throw. Cool, that's it from me. Yes.
Okay, hello everyone. There's more Japan coming up for you. It feels like Japan are really the people to look at when it comes to this sort of stuff. So we're gonna be still looking at some good switching stuff, but also looking at a couple of times where the switching, well, it could have been a good switch if there had been more communication, or sometimes there's a time where like one person switches and the other person doesn't switch. So we want to go the first clip. So this is a clip where you can see there's like this player, the blue player, number 22, is really being very active and covering all the players. So he starts off marking the dump and then drops in to cover the middle option. Someone kind of cutting under. I think it's a bit before that. If we go back just like to the start, maybe. Yeah. So yeah, he's keeping an eye on both options, and the other defenders are working really well as a team to make sure that all the options are covered. And you can see there's a really consistent poach off the dump. And last week when we were looking at poaching, it was more looking at each individual person choosing a time to poach. But this, with Japan, you can see they're forcing middle, and they have a tactic set up where the person will always poach off the dump to cover the middle area. So it's less of a you poach when you think it's a good idea, and more of a this is like our set tactic, and like the whole team's working together. So yeah, that was very close. I'm sure the US didn't really want it to be that sort of close, but that just means that the Japan are putting lots of pressure on both the dump passes and also the underpasses. So then this is looking at the US. I'm gonna play the clip. Okay. Don't wanna keep playing. So you can see if you pause here. So you can see there's someone running deep up the line, and his defender is actually the person who's standing next to the handler. So I think at this point we could probably recognize it's a good time to make a switch, because there's someone deep who is completely aware of the situation who can take over. So yeah, that's a really good time to poach, not to poach, to switch. So if we keep playing, we can see what happens. yeah, so that option is completely covered, and then number 10 drops off to cover this other player. They all thought it worked well. Yeah. This is a bit of a situation in which we have a sort of switch going on, but there's nowhere near enough communication. We probably don't need to watch the whole thing again, but so the main point is, as they get close to the end zone, you can see that the defenders are trying to look for the most dangerous player, but they unfortunately, that means that they leave their player completely undefended. So I think at this point, if we pause here, you can see there's a red player has dropped off to cover the blue player cutting up the line, which is a good option because otherwise that would be a really easy score. But what we don't have, which is the very important part of switching, is someone dropping to cover his player as well. So there needs to be some communication. Maybe you could have 25 who's in the middle dropping to cover 18, because at this point he just leaves his player completely open to get a really easy score. So yeah, we can play the rest. You can see that, and it's very sad for the US. Have if we go back like 10 seconds, we can see one of the US players trying to come valiantly to one of their teammates' rescue to stop this throw, but unfortunately he just ends up completely taking out the other defender. So you can actually see, so the player he left is the third handler, so it's like a relatively safe option to leave. But the other issue that ends up happening is the guy in the middle with the yellow socks then is looking to cover the third handler and even starts to run towards to cover that, completely leaving his player free to get the distant end zone. So it's sort of like everyone is trying to cover for everyone else, but without actually having like the communication between them. That's why it's important you don't just try and react off what your teammates are doing, but actually tell them what you're doing and be like, someone drop onto my player because they're a threat, or don't do that. So yeah, this whole thing, it was just a bit of a mess. And the collision was unfortunate, but it definitely could have been avoided. Yeah. I mean, if they hadn't collided, it's very likely that one of the US players could have dropped off to cover that. So yeah, kind of unlucky, but not the best example of switching. He's doing the worm.
If you were the person in yellow socks, what would you do in this situation?
Is that for me or for the group?
For anybody, for you or the group, or both. If you're the American in yellow socks.
Well, I don't know if anyone else has anything to say. Oh.
I was going to say, you can't really leave a man free in the end zone. He's got to stay on the man he's originally on.
Yeah, definitely. That's basically what I think. But I think it's also about who's the bigger threat. Firstly, he in the where we had it paused before, you can see he's on the wrong side of his defender. He's like under of his defender, and also he's got his back to him completely. Like at this point, kind of. So his defender can so easily get free in the end zone, and he's be completely turned around. There's no way that he can keep up. So I even if he was just as he is now, but on the other side of the defender, I think that would be good. He stayed like there, so you can see the third handler, but also he's blocking the person he's marking from just running straight into the end zone. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think it's kind of an alright that this person left on the dump. Sorry, you can't see my mouse, but the person who was marking the third dump left. But yeah, definitely, I think it was more of a big probably mistake from Yellow Sox guys that he was like, oh, there's a free person, and therefore went to go mark them, but actually he definitely wasn't the threat, being way out the end zone. So
yeah,